Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, the most important thing is about your safety and your health and your loved ones. On today's show, we're going to talk about the Pennsylvania economy. We're going to get into K through 12 education delivered at home. But first, it's about your health, but it's also about your pocketbook. As they say, let's get to it.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
All right, well, joining me now is Brian Roche. He's an anchor and a consumer investigator with WGAL News 8. Hi, Brian. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Terry.
Well, let's start out with you. You're the scam expert. You've been doing these investigations for years. We're trapped in our homes right now, literally trapped in our homes. It's a rich environment for scammers to to get into your pocketbook, to get into so many aspects of your life. What have you found in terms of the single most important scams that our viewers need to be aware of?
Well, the big scams are out there, Terry. The one thing I want to get across to people, though, is that as you mentioned, this is a target-rich environment right now. This is a scammer's dream come true. We are sitting there captive for them to come after. And the two biggest weapons that scammers use, computers and cell phones. And right now, we are talking on a computer, and a lot of people are turning to their computers for information these days. And of course, we're trapped in our homes. And we're near our phones in our house and our cell phones. So the scammers realize that, and they're going to be using those two weapons, which the weapons are in our hands already. I mean, we are literally holding those weapons, and the scammers are going to try to use them in the coming weeks. Kind of scams we're seeing, obviously COVID-19 scams, a lot of emails starting to circulate now about selling medical equipment and trying to come up with some kind of a cure, but everyone has got to be super suspicious right now of anything that they're reading online or getting over their telephone that's touting itself as a cure for this whole bad situation.
Mm-hmm. Well, you also have talked about medical supplies, masks, and PPE. I mean, you think, are they among the predominant scams, as you've just pointed out?
Absolutely. A lot of questions right now. Should we wear a mask or should we not wear a mask? Where can I get one if I don't have one? So the scammers are taking advantage of that, and they are circulating emails. I just had one forwarded to me last night by a viewer asking, is this real? And it does not appear to be real. They're selling 50 masks for $175, and there's no way of knowing whether or not that's legitimate, and it's coming from China. I mean, they basically say we are in China. So something like that is what they're trying to take advantage of in terms of the fear. The PPE, the gowns, and the masks that we see so many medical professionals wearing, they're also trying to sell them online. And of course, they want a credit card to get this information to you and to get the paraphernalia to you. There's no way of knowing whether or not this is legitimate. But again, another classic example of the scammers trying to capitalize on the fear and the paranoia that's out there right now.
And there's something called, you refer to as the computer, or as the check scam. I presume you're talking about checks that you would send people. Take that.
Well, that one, yeah, we've seen that for 20 years now. It's called a fake check scam. They send you a very large check and they want you to return some of the money. But that has been around for about 20 years. But of course, they're taking variations of that now during this situation, and they're sending those checks out and asking people to return the money. Of course, you found out real quick the check bounced and you're out thousands of dollars.
Yeah, what about computer malware? Now you're getting into the real complexities here.
This is, we haven't even seen the tip of the iceberg yet. Here we have millions of people in their homes, such as myself here right now. I'm using laptop computer provided by my employer to talk to you. And so millions of people, if not hundreds of millions of people around the globe right now working from home, using these computers. And if a scammer, a bad guy, a cyber thief can get one piece of malware into one of these computers in a huge network, the limits are they're limitless in terms of what they can compromise. They can compromise an entire company if they can get one employee to fall for something, click on a bad link, and that would unleash a malware storm inside of the entire network of that particular company. So right now, again, any suspicious links that you get telling you that this is going to solve your problems, or your boss wants you to do something, treat them with not a grain of salt, but treat them with a pound of salt.
Look, I want to thank you for the update. Keep doing the great work. Joining me next is Gene Barr. He's the president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. We're going to talk about the health of the Pennsylvania economy, looking currently, but also looking into the future. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
All right, joining me to chat about the Pennsylvania economy is Gene Barr. He's the president of the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry and a frequent guest on the program. Welcome, Gene. I hope you're staying safe and well.
Well, we're all trying to. It's what all of us should be doing. I hope you are too.
Yep, I'm stuck in my house like everybody else.
Like everybody else.
Yeah, the show's being taped. I'm sitting in my dining room. We're all staying home. We're staying in place, I guess is one way to put it. All right, as you know, 29 Pennsylvania senators sent Governor Wolf a letter. They actually complimented him on many things that he has done currently to deal with the pandemic in our state, but they also raised concerns long-term about as the pandemic, as we reach the apex and we get over the curve and it starts to drop, what's going to happen to the Pennsylvania economy, which has suffered severely as a result of the coronavirus.
We have. And look, let's be honest. This is, as we've heard time and again, there's no playbook for this. Nobody can say, gee, here's how you respond to a novel coronavirus. You go to page 12 and do this. We're all working through this. The governor's working through this, and he and his folks are doing the best they can. The administration is doing the best they can, walking a path that none of us have ever walked before. The senators have expressed concern, particularly related to the construction industry. Pennsylvania has some pretty severe constraints on building, probably more severe than almost every other state in the union. And I think they are expressing concern. And their concern is we need to make sure we keep as many people working as we can so that when this recovery goes, that we haven't dug as deep as perhaps we're afraid that we might. And so it's making sure that we've got that in place, that we can bounce back quickly. And, again, this is trying to balance the health issues versus economic issues.
Yeah, well, I mean, the other aspect of this is that Pennsylvania's economy, unlike economies in some other states, is extraordinarily diverse. And so when you start to close aspects of it down, and we all understand in the pandemic why that's necessary for some industries, but don't we have to be extraordinarily careful given the diversity of it, that if we're not careful, it's going to be much harder to energize the economy and bring back jobs once, the pandemic, diminishes?
Well, it's a great point, because were recently, early this year, late last year, rated as the most diverse economy in the United States. Texas was second. And when you look at Pennsylvania, we're an incredibly diverse state and diverse economy. We're tremendous in the energy side, as we've talked about on the show before. We have a huge agricultural side. We have pharmaceuticals. We have technology. We have biotech. We are incredibly diverse, which means that we get hit in really across the board here when you look at this. And so we do need to make sure that we're covering each of those. We're trying to limit this as much as possible, while again, what's paramount is protecting the health of Pennsylvanians. So it's walking that fine line and waiting to turn that economy up when we see that ability to do that. I think you saw that expressed in the letter. We have a process in place to try and keep some of these businesses open. The big concern we have is we need to make sure that we don't adversely impact the supply chain, to make that supply chain disrupted such that that recovery becomes more difficult than it otherwise might have.
Yeah, well, we're going to run to a break. One of the things that should be of great concern to all of us is the high unemployment in this state, and whether or not, how is that going to work out once, the economy begins to recover? Will people have jobs? Will some employers move on, and develop other aspects of their businesses? We'll continue with Gene Barr after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Cross-State Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Welcome back. All right, Gene Barr, we got unusually high unemployment in this state, which is, in some respects, given the diversity of the state, you might find unusual, but it's there and it's a problem. And moving the state forward with that high unemployment is not going to be easy.
Not going to be easy. I think we got to start looking at it already, and I think we can come back. I think there's plans. There's a lot of discussion already about how we bring Pennsylvania back. Yes, we have been hit hard, no question about it. Governor Wolf started a lot of these before other states did. Therefore, our numbers showed earlier. We've been more stringent than a lot of others, and as we've talked about, that diversity hits as well. But we have to start thinking now, and we are, about how we bring Pennsylvania back. What have we learned? How do we come out of this thing? And I certainly do believe that we will, that we can, and we will.
Well, what aspects of the Department of Homeland Security are relevant for this business of trying to get business back in the economy?
Yeah, the Department of Homeland Security has come out with critical infrastructure and essential workforce guidelines that most states are using as is. Pennsylvania has used those largely as guidance and has called on businesses to ask for waivers. That's resulted in 32,000 waivers in the queue at this point. And Department of Community and Economic Development has said they're ending that waiver, or at least suspending the waiver process, effective 5 o'clock on Friday. So I think they're going to take that in, go through those waivers, and hopefully be able, at that point, we'll be able to talk with them a little bit about how we can expedite some of these appropriately, again, keeping in mind that the utmost concern is the health and safety of Pennsylvanians, but see if we can find a way of allowing those businesses that should be operating and can operate safely the ability to move forward.
Well, hopefully the $2.2 trillion, federal law that was passed is going to bring some help. I presume you all have looked at that to help sustain some businesses, and particularly the folks who are out of work. That has to be critically important as we move forward.
We've looked at that extensively. We've been working with the U.S. Chamber, even other organizations, NAM, the U.S. Business Roundtable. We've had the Chamber doing a couple seminars, webinars, obviously nothing in person, with our members, making sure they understand all of the aspects that can help individuals, from unemployment insurance and their taxes, and particularly with businesses, the various programs that are out there to allow businesses not only to stay in business, but to retain their employees to the maximum extent possible. As we said, the more we can keep people working, the better we're going to rebound from this. But we're going to do our utmost to make sure that Pennsylvania and this country rebound from this and come back strong.
All right. Well, I'm giving you an assignment, and that is to come back on the program frequently and keep us updated on what's going on. I want to thank you for your contribution, and stay well and stay safe. All right, coming up, 1.7 million Pennsylvania students are at home. That's quite a challenge for the teachers, for the students, for the school districts of Pennsylvania. We'll get into that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Welcome back. Joining me is Rich Askey. He's the president of the Pennsylvania State Education Association, and we're delighted to have him on. Number one, something like 1.7 million K through 12 students are getting their education online, essentially at home. So in general, Rich, how are public schools and educators meeting this coronavirus problem when you're trying to provide education, what I call by virtual reality, in other words, over the internet? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I would say we're like 2.5 weeks into this, and the things that I have seen are teachers, our paraprofessionals, our students, and our families doing in these past 2.5 weeks to make sure that our kids are getting the best public education that they can. It's simply amazing what they're doing and how everybody's working together. All of our members have become professionals in Zoom. They're using apps and websites like Google Classroom and Schoology to do things. But I think the important thing to note is that people are, the teachers are still teaching and the students are still learning. And that's just amazing that as many districts were able to get up and running as quickly as they are. It's happening.
You know what's surprising? When I listen to reports and see reports throughout the state, and what's really important to me is the remarkable interaction and the way in which teachers in the field, parents and students are working together. That's what's really remarkable, you know, given the pressure, given the intensity of the coronavirus problem.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I know from just talking to a lot of my members and even seeing their social media posts and things like that, that they are really connecting with their families. They're doing conference calls with parents, you know, special needs students. They're still doing their IEPs and meeting with the parents via Zoom and the telephone, making sure that every student is getting what they need. And it's a very emotional time, I think, for both the teachers and the students. You know, students want to be in school, they want to be learning, and teachers want to be in school and want to be teaching. So again, it's just been it's been really nice to see what's going on in the public education system in Pennsylvania right now.
Well, let's go to an important specific: remote education, or as I call it, virtual reality, online education. What are some of the challenges that are really important to talk about as you all and the state deals with the problem?
Well, it just depends what resources the district had and what they had ready to go. Technology, of course, is all over the place across the state. So some areas have great technology. Some districts have the resources and they know that their students all have laptops and there's no worry there. Then you get into the districts that do not have the resources and the communities that don't. So, for instance, my sister-in-law teaches is a paraprofessional in a very rural, very small school district. She's in today making learning packets for the kids, and they are going to be delivering them out to the community. So it's going from very easy Zooms and Schoologies to putting actual paper together and making sure it gets in the hands of the students.
Yeah, this is sort of nonstop. I mean, for both the students and the teachers. I mean, obviously teachers have lesson plans, they go in, they do their work, but this is like almost 24/7. I mean, given the complexity of it, giving students that have access to the internet, students that don't have access, dealing with, you know, lesson plans delivered in a different way. I mean, in many places in colleges, you know, we have online classes being done, you know, they were being done previously, but this is pretty new, delivering all of the education online for teachers as well as students.
Yeah, it's certainly been a very quick learning curve for everybody.
Yeah.
I have to say that, but they've come up to the bar. They really have. I'm just enjoying watching what our members are doing and how creative they're being with their online teaching.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you a more general question. actually, about the governor and his decision to close the schools. It looks like he says until further notice. That's the way they put it. But let's face it, the academic year is gone for the students. Would you agree with that?
It looks that way, yes. It certainly looks that way. And I think everybody's preparing for that. Everybody has that in the back of their mind, because it's important to keep the instruction going as long as possible. You know, we talk about summer slide, and we don't want to start that summer slide where students take a few steps back when they're not in the classroom. We don't want that to start now. We absolutely must keep the learning and the teaching going on. So everybody's prepared for the long haul in this, if it turns out that way.
And you agreed with the governor's decision to close schools. I mean, there wasn't any debate about that because of how rapid this virus affects people and the multiplicity of it as we're seeing right now.
Well, the well-being of our students and the communities we teach in, and of course our members that are in those buildings, that is their safety and their health is so important. And schools are a hub for a community, so there's a lot of in and out, and social distancing in a school, it can't happen. It just can't happen. How can you feed, you put all those kids into a cafeteria at one time, boom. So it just wasn't an option. And we support and we agree with Governor Wolf's decision.
Yeah, do you think this is going to change education? I mean, once we're through this, do you think that there's going to be much more education done online and remotely? I'm not suggesting that schools will close down, in that way, but this could literally lead to a pretty big change in how education is delivered in the state.
Yeah, first of all, I think it's going to change our lives in a lot of ways besides just in the schools. But yes, it's going to change how we teach, how we learn, and maybe we can find more ways to do enrichment online with the students, and where the teachers can reach out to their students in more quickly, more informative ways, like when they're home doing homework and they need a little help. Maybe we're going to learn some ways and how to make that happen in a better way.
Yeah, I think you're right. We have about 25 seconds. You're also looking for additional revenue from the state, I would assume, given what's going on right now.
Well, we know that the budget process is still going on, so we're hoping that they will look at what resources are needed.
Thanks. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.